Let's say you're playing this in a tournament game, you get the white pieces, how would you continue? And of course, this is from my favorite book lately, so feel free to pause the video, evaluate the position, and come up with your plan, your next moves. I'm showing it to you because I learned something very important, and when I first looked at it, guys, I thought the white pieces, it's not so clear if the white pieces can win this. These pawns are pretty powerful, is Rook Endgame, they could get counterplay easily. However, the engine agrees with Gulko here, and the next move is the counterintuitive move King F2. So I'm allowing you to do this fork, and then you get my pawn on A2. So that means you're going to get 3 connected pass pawns. I only get a pass pawn on the H file. However, the one thing that they highlight here and that I make sure I never forget is the importance of the vulnerable black king in this situation. So Goku's trying to play actively to bring the king and the pawns and the rook to create some sort of mating net or to just promote one of the pawns, right? And you're going to see here some of the principles that we covered on lesson, I want to say 123 or so. So after King f2, rook b2, king g3, activating that king, rook d8 check. And this is a very interesting move because it looks like, oh, I'm helping them activate that king, but nope. In reality, I'm putting that king on the 7th rank for some ideas with the pin of the pawn or eventually kicking that king away and collect the pawn on f7. But now one thing is for certain, guys, if I collect on b7, these pawns are not going to be so powerful, right? So the king and the rook could take care of it at some point. And if you've been over all of the Rook Endgames lessons we've had, this is much easier to understand. So after rook d7, b5, g5, and now notice how these pawns next to each other, they're not allowing this king to move up, right? And needless to say that g6 is also in the air, and this is what I mentioned before. This idea of rook d8, rook d7 with a tempo on the pawn, now g6 is going to be in the air at the right moment. So the black pieces decided to say, you know what, let me stay away from this pin. But now, of course, we continue to bring the h pawn, pawn to b4. This pawn is not gonna go anywhere, so the white pieces continued with h5. And guys, this is still winning, but the shortest, the best way to win this game was actually check and only then h5. And of course, this move is not even possible because of this nice detail that is good for you to see it, right? And we continue to reinforce it. g6, pawn takes, f6, and the pawn goes. There's nothing they could do about it. The king cannot get any closer. When we play f7, the rook is waiting to support the pawn. And notice how this rook can never help from behind because it's too close to my king. So instead, they decided to just play h5, then rook a1, and this is exactly what this is for. If you already went over lesson number, I want to say 54 with the Philidor endgame, you should know this defensive technique. And this was actually marked as a great move because, again, it's a very important resource to try to fight for a draw. So after check, king h7 now, king f4, trying to activate that king as well. Notice that g6, not good, guys, because after the king gets to g7, you're not going to get him out. It's going to be a draw. You could do check if you like. I'm going to go in here. And even with king f4, I have these checks coming afterwards. So very important to not make any silly mistakes, to not get ahead of ourselves. So instead, activate the king. This is a very important pattern to never forget. Pawns next to each other, they're going to be controlling the squares in front of them. So keep that in mind, okay? Don't push them, just like in the middle game, just don't push them unless you have a very good reason for it. So king f4, f6, g6, and this is just a matter, this was already time pressure. So you're going to see one of the principles we talked on lesson number 90 or 92 applied here. Check, check, h6. This is already, you see, these pawns, 2 pawns on the 6th rank. We learned on lesson 123 that they could be more powerful than a rook. So after h6, the rook comes from behind, check, check. And these guys, remember the psychological principle that we discussed on lesson 90 or 92, right? So king h8, then king f7. I'm threatening checkmate. And of course, I'm attacking this pawn. Now here, black, the first move they did is, look at this pawn, right? So controlling this king, so they go check, making you go down king f3. They take the pawn now. Instead of taking the pawn right away, they do this in-between move. Only then they take it. So I take this pawn, then check, check, and I go towards the passed pawn. But guys, more than that, I'm threatening this checkmate idea as well. So after a5 to protect the pawn, we got king f4, f6, and at this point, the black pieces resign. It doesn't matter what they do now, this is coming, and please notice that this move was not possible right away, because then they have the same defensive resource attacking from behind, right? So instead, we gotta make sure the king is close enough, and then after f6, even if they put us in check, we could just move out the way. Any more checks, we could even go here and hide behind the pawns, whatever, but they don't have that skewer anymore.